Good morning or afternoon, wherever you are joining me from. My name is Karen Schaefer, and I am owner and CEO of Compass Family Journeys. Oftentimes, I get the question from people basically asking, why do we need to go with an agency? Why is this important for intended parents? And so I wanted to do a quick rundown of what exactly the agency does, why it could be important to some people, why other people might not see as much value in it, which is okay too, and just give you an idea as to how we can truly assist in your gestational carrier journey. So, to give you a little bit of information about us, Compass actually specializes in three different paths to parenthood. The first, of course, is gestational surrogacy journeys. We also do known egg donation journeys. And then we just started a new program called Guided Independent Journeys. I will have a recording and a breakdown of each of those individual paths that you can take. However, this one will mainly focus on gestational surrogacy journeys, the full service agency, just since that's what I normally get questions on. And that's something that it still tends to be the top business model, I guess you would say, of Compass and what we do most frequently. So about me, I am actually a mom of two. I've got a 7-year-old daughter named Millie and a 10-year-old son named Liam. They were both conceived with the help of IVF. I then went on to be an egg donor, a total of 5 cycles for that, and then 3 surrogacy journeys. And then I also donated our remaining embryos once we were done completing our family. So my husband jokes that I can't seem to get out of the world of infertility, which, it's just one of those things that I have a true passion for. And I've continued to try to be involved in either, on a volunteer basis or professionally, of course, or personally in helping others that are struggling with that. So our mission statement here at Compass, I'm going to read it. So it's hard. I want to look at the camera, but also at the PowerPoint. But essentially, we are here to navigate, coordinate, and assist paths to parenthood through gestational surrogacy and known egg donation with honesty, ethical actions, transparency, and strong communication as top priorities in each individualized journey. So we want everyone to feel like an individual. We want to have open lines of communication, and we want you to feel like everything is being done in a transparent and ethical manner. So, do you need an agency? Well, maybe you don't expect this answer, maybe you do, but no, you don't. The agency is not a pertinent part for this process when it comes to parentage, which is the biggest piece of the puzzle. We need to make sure that you are able to obtain parentage for your child, and that those steps are fairly seamless to get that process completed. And so that is something on a legal standpoint, the agency is not needed. There are a lot of parents that really do navigate this journey beautifully, and they're able to do it independently alongside their surrogate. And that is, I love it when people can do that, because it is something that it can save financially for parents. But it's typically, I've also noticed that the cases where you hear that you don't need the agency, we did it, everything went beautifully, they tend to be, the cases that maybe don't have as many hiccups. They're a little bit easier to navigate. They're a little bit more on autopilot, which I'll go over here in a bit. And so that there, I can't say that there's, a causation there, but there's certainly a correlation that I've seen between the people that advocate for these independent journeys because they did it, and they know that you can do it too. And as long as you're aware that, things will come up, things will occur, there will be hiccups, and you're willing to navigate those, then you absolutely can do that too. So what do you need, to navigate this journey? What, if you wanted to do this, what do you need to make sure that you're prepared with? Education is obviously the big one. That is my job. I'm here to educate myself, learn, and then use that knowledge to then help you navigate your journey. So if you want to do this on your own, you're going to have to step into that student role and educate yourself, learn the process, learn what the different steps are, how to complete those steps in an organized manner, to where you're not, maybe skipping ahead and then wasting funds, having to rewind it, step back. You really want to make sure that you understand, the overall part of where you need to control it, where you can control it, where you kind of have to let other professionals navigate it. So that's going to be key, education. And the second is partnerships. This is one area where agencies, we do have a strong suit. We're working with other professionals all the time. And so we know who to send you to for legal, for the clinical side, for outside monitoring. We know what's expected for travel arrangements. We know what is expected and what we need to look for with health insurance and how to make sure that everything is lined up properly. So there's a lot of different partnerships that we have already formed that you will need to make sure that you're lining up, that you'll need to know that they're specific to the state where your surrogate is located. That's a biggie too. So you can't necessarily start this process in your home state with, legal teams and such that maybe don't or can't navigate the parentage side within the state where the surrogate's located. There are many legal teams that can work simultaneously outside of the state where the surrogate is, but those are things that you're going to have to make sure that the legal team is aware of, and then you'll have to make sure that your clinic understands that you're going to go about this independently. Find out from them if they require anything from their side, so that you're not losing valuable time at the beginning of that screening process. And resilience, and I know the reality is that so many parents that are coming to surrogacy, you've already endured a lot. You're resilient, but there's a lot of stressors involved in this, right? So we need to make sure that you are prepared to maybe take on additional stressors, that it's maybe you weren't prepared for the money talks or the confrontation. Did you really go into depth on your termination views? Did you have your heart set on a double embryo transfer, and then your surrogate at the last minute goes, I don't think I can do it, or after talking to the psych evaluator, like, I just feel like it's not a good idea. Where are you going to stand? What are going to be your make it or break it deals? How are you going to navigate that relationship with your surrogate on both the business and the personal level? Those are just all the parts and pieces that you do need to consider in this. So how will the agency help me? So I like to use a theory called the train theory. This probably isn't, I probably didn't, it's not like original to me, but it's something that has kind of evolved over time as I've talked about the process and how to best, I guess, give an overall glimpse as to what my job is, how I can help facilitate this from my side. So this is kind of an overview of the steps, but the first step is going to be lining up the tracks. We know where we're starting. We know where we need to get to, and how we need to get there. And so as the agency, our job is to lay out those tracks, make sure that we're taking the least amount of twists and turns possible, to get there, because we know you want to get there. You've already put a lot of time and effort into this. And so we will help to make sure that track is outlined and everyone's on board and understands how that looks. And the second part is to get the box cars in place. So essentially we can foresee what the journey is going to need and how it's going to need to be put into place, and how those different parts and pieces of the journey need to occur in order for the train to actually start moving. Also, we are the conductor. We get the train set, it's ready to go. And so our next job is going to be to basically make sure that we're starting on that track and we're getting moving forward. And it's also a part where we need to find out, are there going to be detours? Are there going to be things that come up? And then fourth and final point, it's not our first train ride. We've done this. We've navigated this multiple times. It might seem new and scary to you. Something might come up that it totally blows you out of the water as far as something that wasn't expected. And it's, whether it's highly emotional, upsetting, if it's happy, if it's a good surprise, any of those things, oftentimes we've seen it. As hard as that is to imagine, we may have already navigated it. So it's going to be a little bit easier for us to be like, okay, we've been there, we've done that, and let's figure out how to move on to the next step. All right, I am actually resuming this after a phone call, so I was probably in a totally different spot as soon as I turned this camera on than I was before. But let's go ahead and move on. So I wanted to talk about the steps, the different steps, a little bit more in depth to give you some background on how each one plays out, or how basically this idea of a train plays into my agency. So the first one with lining up tracks, or lining up the tracks for your train journey. I know that you have probably in many instances already waited a long time. You're wanting to get to the finish line as soon as possible. And it's been a lot of, waiting. You probably might have even thought that you would have already been a parent at this stage. So all of that combined, it really does make for this need to at least, nothing's quick about this process, but you want to try to get it done in the least amount of time that is possible. So it's there, and I had this in one of the slides in the past, but there really isn't a one-stop shop for the surrogacy process. There's a bunch of different people and entities that you're going to be working with to get from the start line to the finish. And so what we are doing is we're making sure that the tracks are aligned in a way to where the order makes sense, and we're not hitting snags, we're not taking too sharp of turns, and it just flows. That track flows. So we're having to get you set up with your clinic, make sure the clinic has everything that they need in order to approve the surrogate. We're making sure that your medical screening is actually in place. And I'm going to be doing another video on this, on the actual medical screening, what they're looking for with the medical screening, and why it's okay if something comes up during the medical screening. But that there's a lot of parts just in that very, very beginning stages before legal is even done. And then we need to make sure that track flows into legal, and that they're prepared for you, because sometimes it can take some time to wait for those results on screening, and that we've got the escrow account set up. We've got that ready to go and ready to fund, so that you can move into your transfer as quickly as possible. And so we've built those professional relationships. And so it's when you're saying, hey, my surrogate is in Texas, or she's in Utah, or she's in Nevada, or she's in Georgia, wherever it might be, we can be like, all right, well, we've worked with these teams before. It's certainly always going to be your choice as to whom you use for both legal and the escrow process. But we can give you very clear expectations and how past journeys have gone, so that you know who might be a good bet as far as those teams are concerned, and which ones are going to help with cutting down on the timeline as much as possible, and which ones collaborate the best together, because professionals will have to kind of move together, and the agency is there to create those connections and that flow between the professionals. But a lot of times that, like, say your attorney is going to have to work really well with the attorney for the GC, and that all your information is going to, then have to get over to the escrow account. So it's just aligning that track, making sure that then everything is going well with that. The other part of the track that you're probably not seeing is getting the surrogate screened. You know, where did this train already come from? What have we done? And so that's something that, say, in a independent journey, you haven't. With the agency, you haven't had to put the time and effort into getting that surrogate screened, making sure that everything is put together on that end. And so that's something that we have already taken care of. That's part of the track, so that's part of what we're here for. So we're just making sure it's in place, it's in line. And then the next piece of the puzzle is getting the box cars in place. So the box cars is really kind of, I guess, where the meat and potatoes is. This is where everything gets lined up to then take this journey. So we, kind of imagine the agency as we're the engine. We're going to be, driving this train, getting it to where it needs to go. So the next step is lining up those box cars, getting them in the right order, seeing which ones are pertinent to your journey. Not every step of the process is going to be relevant to everyone's journey. So if there's a step that we're like, that was done, or your clinic doesn't require it, or that's not required for parentage, there may be some steps that we can kind of, navigate around or change it so that it happens at a different time. And then we can also see, okay, we know we love your clinic. We love your clinic too. We've worked with them before, but heads up, our last case might have taken 4 months just to get to medical screening. There can be things like that, so we can kind of let you know where we might see those delays and when it might be beneficial, on a timeline basis, to maybe change another boxcar and put it in front of the one that typically goes first. So each boxcar, what does it represent? It's basically each professional entity or step within the process. Think of it as its own boxcar. So it's you've got to get those, kind of put together. You need to consider how much weight is this one carrying? Is this going to drag down the rest of it? Those are all considerations. So some boxcar examples. A big one, especially in the beginning process, is going to be that those clinical boxcars. And I tell people they typically have at least two. So you've got, the one that has basically the screening process, both the on paper screening and then the in-person screening. So how is your clinic going to stack the different steps into that boxcar? What are they going to require? What does their timeline look like? Do they require a phone consult that needs to be scheduled, weeks out before her physical? Those are all those bits and parts of pieces to that boxcar that, would be an example of one step of the process. Other examples are going to be obviously your legal process, your escrow account, health insurance. Can it be utilized? Has it been looked into? Do we know what we're doing? Are we in the middle of the year and we're going to need to plan on, with open enrollment? So that's going to have its own boxcar. Travel plans. I joke that some days I feel more like a travel agent than I do anything else, because I'm booking flights and rental cars, or deciding if Uber is more cost efficient, or setting up the hotel, making sure that, she's there for as long as she needs to be, what other options might be if we've got weather delays. All those parts, those are all their own individual parts of this process. So as the agency, can we control them? It truly depends. So there are going to be some that we can be like, no, you need this boxcar to go first. If you don't have this first, if this isn't happening first, then the boxcar behind isn't going to get loaded, because we can't start loading that, until this part's done. Or if you load that first, you may be taking all of that out and rearranging it, and that's going to waste time and money to get that rearranged. So there are some where we can kind of, control the basically the order that those boxcars are in, and then we can kind of help on the contents within that boxcar based on, helping you choose your legal teams, your escrow teams, and making sure that the clinic has everything that they need in order to make this as smooth of a process too. And so That's also, why it is important to pick verified professionals who's done this before, who knows what they're doing, who's navigated, maybe you've got a unique parentage situation, who within that state has done this before, what hiccups have they had with parentage, what would still be considered an issue, what isn't going to be an issue. So all of that is kind of, the different parts that we can help control as to who's going to be, filling those boxcars. But ultimately, it is something where each professional entity is going to be responsible to stack up the items within that boxcar based on their own processes, their own internal processes. And we're basically here to communicate with you what those processes are. So what if a boxcar is loaded incorrectly? So this is what I was talking about before. It's like I've had some parents that for some reason we just hit a time where their clinic is extremely busy. And so they're looking at a couple months out to even be able to do medical screening. And especially right now when we've got, I don't like calling it a shortage of surrogates because I think that it's always been similar as far as, people that are willing to do it. But there tends to be, there's a little bit more competition involved, right? So there's, there are some, maybe more unethical practices out there to where people are being, potential surrogates, or maybe your surrogate that you've been matched with is hearing someone chirp in their ear about, hey, if you come with me, we might be able to do this faster, or I can get you more, or whatever the case may be. And yeah, it's, maybe you did kind of, dodge a bullet at some points if you had to go in a different direction. But regardless, it's what we have been seeing is that there isn't quite the same level of patience, maybe, from the surrogate side, because she is being told, and it's correct, she probably can match with another couple whose clinic could get them in or get her in the next 2 weeks versus 2 months. And so I have had parents that have been like, you know what, we're going to put legal first. We're going to take the chance. Let's just get legal done because we don't want her to walk. We don't want her to get cold feet. We don't want to wait even longer. Maybe open enrollment is coming up. We need to make sure that we've got everything in place for that. So, sometimes we do need to put different, box cars first. And then there are times where, maybe it's not loaded incorrectly, but we had to slam on the brakes and things might have fallen, broken within one of those boxcars. And so we need to take a little bit of a break. We need to get those reloaded. We need to get them restacked, and so then that's really our job as the agency is to make sure that it's done in a way that's going to waste the least amount of time possible, and add the least amount of stress possible to you during the journey. So we, the agency, we're the conductor. So we are ready to get the train moving. We have the engine in place. We have the tracks in place. We know where we're going. We've got the boxcars lined up. They're packed up. Everything is put into place. And so we're going to start moving this train toward the finish line. So this is another point. Okay, so I've had people say, is your work done then? Are you only, as the agency, are you only really having to help during the first stages until pregnancy is achieved? Can't you just put this on autopilot? And I would say there are some journeys where it does feel like autopilot. And from my standpoint, because, well, this is still a job, those journeys are beautiful because as the conductor, I can sit back. It goes beautifully. I can watch the scenery. It is a joy to be a part of some of those journeys that really have very, very few hiccups, and things seem to just be happening, the correct way. But then there are still a lot, and as much as I like to be optimistic, there are things that go sideways, they go wrong, things come up. We still deal with, transfers that don't work, or miscarriages, or, even later term pregnancy loss, unfortunately, which is awful, for everyone involved to go through. But it's something that you do kind of get to a point of it's not a matter if something will go wrong, it's a matter of when, which is a very pessimistic viewpoint to have. But it is, you have to be prepared for it. I always say, plan for worst case scenario and be pleasantly surprised when things go correctly. And so we want things to be smooth and we want things to not, go sideways. But if they do, if we're on that track and we are like, uh-oh, we need to stop this train, maybe we need to go back to a second transfer, a third transfer. Maybe she's having pregnancy complications that, are going to require some more like higher risk care. And so we need to make sure that OB boxcar is rearranged to accommodate for that. Maybe, gosh, like the pandemic, that totally threw things for a loop. We had to totally rearrange boxcars at that point in time, and travel arrangements or getting parents to the US even. So there's a lot of things that do unfortunately come up that we do need to help navigate, and not all of them are negative. Some, there are times where it's a good thing that has come up, but it still is going to necessitate maybe a pause or a realignment of the plan. And that's again what we're here for. So if that track needs to be maybe picked up and moved a different way, or we need to take one boxcar and stick it on the back because the contents are being ornery and not working how we want them to work, then that's, we're there. But it's truly, I guess what I would say is like our goal is to make sure that when you and your surrogate are on this journey with us and we're in the conductor seat, we're up there, we're making sure that this train moves forward. We want you to be able to just take in the scenery of the ride. We want you to focus on that relationship and that communication that isn't based on like the logistical business side of it, because that is what we're taking over. We're taking over that awkwardness, and we're making sure that the business side is going smoothly so that you can just focus on the pregnancy itself, on your future child, and make sure that your surrogate is also feeling like she's, has the support that she needs on her side as she's going through this many times for the first time. It can be an odd situation because it's not something people can, yes, you can do it a few times, but it's not something that's done over and over and over again by one particular person. So ultimately, we want you to see success. We do not want to see your journey filled with roadblocks and additional stressors, chaos. That's not how anyone's journey should go. And while there are some unfortunate cases that even with an agency can be messy, it's something that's not our goal. That's not anyone's goal, obviously, but because we know how to foresee those issues and foresee changes that are occurring or could occur based on, maybe some red flags that we're seeing or whatnot, we can be like, hey, let's figure this out. Let's step to the side and kind of make sure that we're navigating this appropriately so that we're maintaining, that same level of professionalism and care for everyone involved in the journey. So if it is something that you're feeling could be beneficial to you, feel free to reach out. You are more than welcome to set up an individualized IP consult. I do calls like this all the time, video chats, so that you can ask questions specific to your journey or why, what your particular situation is and why it might be beneficial to go with us. And then you are also more than welcome, if you've got a certain situation, say maybe you found a surrogate independently and you're kind of wanting to know what direction to go in, I'm more than happy to walk you through that. And just, we're here. I always say I'm an email or a text away. I am always here to be contacted, and just make sure that you're staying tuned for my follow-up videos. I'm going to go, I'll have one for each type of project that I have going on, or a journey option that I have going on that might be able to save some funds for you, depending on how much effort you might want to put into it. And like, I've got an option that's kind of meeting in the middle. Bring her, bring your surrogate to me, and let's navigate this together. That might be a little bit more cost effective. And then also, if you're just kind of in the trenches there, I want to be able to give a good overview of what surrogacy is in general. And as we get further into it, I'll have other videos that involve the different steps within the process so that you can get a good feeling for what that process or what that step in the process is going to look like. So I really appreciate your time today. I talk a lot, I'm sorry, but hopefully it was a good amount of information and kind of gives you some more to think about. And I hope you have a great rest of your week here.